Good morning, Facebook. Good morning, YouTube. Hello. Totally just realized that Zoom gave me quite the look. Here we go. All right, share here. As you're hopping on live, say hello. As you're watching on replay, #replay. Let me know where you're watching from, and if you have any specific prayer requests, let me know. I'm down in my basement today, and so I've got my work clothes on, and then I got my robe on to keep me warm. We always got to layer up, I say. It's freezing here today. There was frost on my husband's vehicle this morning. Not looking forward to this cold weather. No, no, no. Alrighty. So, good morning, Mom. Good morning. I'm late a little bit this morning. Had to go out and running, and I had a couple of appointments and some meetings I had to attend to. We are 5 through 8 this morning, I think. And I, of course, got some Timbertown coffee, and it's like vanilla pecan. It's really, really good. So we are week 8, 5 through 8. Yep. And so I realized that I haven't read a inspiration story in a while. So we are actually, I'm going to read this miracle story, and then we're going to read, for some reason I skipped this last week. So we are going to read the inspiration story, then pray, then read our reading. So here we go. This is from Jamie Gatchell. It says, the family was so excited. It was September 1990, and we were going to have our ultrasound to find out the gender of the first baby on both sides of the family. It wasn't long before we're called back to the ultrasound room. The technician wasn't very chatty, and she didn't even ask us if we wanted to know the baby's gender. She excused herself and came back with the doctor I was scheduled to see that day. And he looked somber and said, I hate to have to give you bad news, but your baby has a concord plexus cyst. The outcome won't be good. I recommend terminating the pregnancy. The happiest day of our lives took a nosedive. When I could finally speak, I told the doctor my baby was going to be fine. God was going to heal my baby. And although I had 2 questions for him, I wanted to know if we were going to have a boy or girl, and what was a coral plexus cyst. We were expecting a girl, and the coral plexus cyst was a cyst that forms in the concord plexus area of the brain. I worked at one of the largest facilities for the developmentally disabled and special needs population in the South. So knowing what kind of cyst this was interests me. That way I could give all the glory to God for this miracle. The enemy tried to make me afraid, but the love I had for my baby, and not to mention my faith in God as my Jehovah Rapha, wouldn't allow me to succumb to fear. After telling us how bad the situation was, the doctor agreed to do a repeat ultrasound in 1 month. If the cyst had not shrunk or had grown, the pregnancy would be terminated according to him. I told him we'd see him in a month, but God would heal my baby girl. We got home and I had my mother and mother-in-law start a prayer chain at their churches. I asked every Christian I knew to pray. God had given me peace that surpassed all understanding. A week before the repeat ultrasound, it happened. I was at a stop sign, having left work, singing old hymn, Living by Faith, and I knew at that exact moment my baby's brain was healed. I felt as if someone reached into my belly and plucked the cyst out. Well, he did. I couldn't wait to get home and call and tell everyone my news. The next doctor's appointment finally came, and I walked in grinning from ear to ear. I told the ultrasound technician she wouldn't find a cyst because it was gone. She nodded politely. Halfway through the exam, she excused herself. The husband grabbed my hand, and not knowing what to think, this time she came back with several doctors and nurses, and the room began to fill up with onlookers. Many of them were crying. The doctor who suggested terminating my pregnancy told us the cyst was gone, and the surrounding brain tissue must have absorbed it. I told him, yes, it's gone, but God took it. I felt it when he did, and even he had tears glistening in his eyes. At 6:19 a.m. on April 18th, 1991, my daughter Blair was born. She was beautiful and very alert, and she still is. Psalms 139:13-14 states, "For you created my innermost being. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and I know full well He is a wonder-working God." All right, and that is our miracle story for today. I'm going to go ahead and read, as long as these boys don't go cuckoo nuts. And our chapters, which is 5-8. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for today, Lord. I just ask that you just be with us, Lord, that we can see your miraculous healings and miraculous testimonies and miracles and blessings that you have in our lives, Lord, that we can seek you diligently each and every day to see those miracles. Father, I thank you so much for all that you're doing in my life and all you're doing in each and every one watching's lives, Father. Be with us today. May we have ears to hear, eyes to see, and hearts wide open to receive what it is you have for us today. And I pray all this in your precious and holy name. Amen. Amen. All right, so here we go. Chapter 5, Deuteronomy. Moses called all Israel together. He said to them, "Attention, Israel. Listen obediently to the rules and regulations I am delivering to your listening ears today. Learn them, live them. God, our God, make a covenant with us at Horeb." God didn't just make this covenant with our parents, he made it also with us, with all of us who are living alive right now. God spoke to you personally out of the fire on the mountain, and at the time I stood between God and you to tell you what God said. You were afraid, remember, of the fire and wouldn't climb the mountain, he said. I am God, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the houses of slaves. No other gods, only me. No carved gods of any size, shape, or form, or whatever, whether on things that fly or walk or swim. Don't bow down to them. Don't serve them, because I am God, your God. And I am a most jealous God. I hold parents responsible for any sins they pass on to their children, to the third, and yes, even the fourth generations. I am loving, loyal, and to thousands who love me and keep my commandments. No using the name of God, your God, in curses or silly banter. God won't put up with their irreverent use of his name. No working on the Sabbath. Keep it holy, just as God, your God, commands you. Work 6 days doing everything you have to do. But on the seventh is Sabbath, a rest day. No work, not you, your sons, your daughters, or your servant, your maid, your ox, your donkey, or any of your animals, and not even the foreigner visiting your town. That way your servants and maids will get the same rest as you. Don't ever forget that you were slaves in Egypt, and God, your God, got you out there in the powerful show of strength. That's why God, your God, commands you to observe the day of Sabbath rest. Respect your father and mother. God, your God, commands it. You'll have a long life, and the land that God is giving you will treat you well. No murder, no adultery, no stealing, no lies about your neighbor, no coveting your neighbor's wife, no lusting for his house, field, servant, maid, ox, donkey either. Nothing that belongs to your neighbor. These are the words God spoke to the whole congregation at the mountain. He spoke in a tremendous voice from the fire cloud and dark mist. And that was it. No more words. Then he wrote them on 2 slabs of stone and gave them to me. And it turned out when he heard the voice out of that dark cloud and saw the mountain on fire, you approached me, all the heads of your tribes and your leaders, and said, our God has revealed to us his glory and greatness. We've heard him speak to the fire today. You've seen that God can speak to humans and they can still live. But why? Risk it further? This huge fire will devour us if we stay around any longer. If we hear God's voice anymore, we'll die for sure. Has anyone ever known of anyone who has heard the voice of God the way we have and live to tell the story? From now on, you go and listen to what God, your God, says, and then tell us what God tells you. We'll listen and we'll do it. God heard what you said to me and told me, I've heard what people said to you. That's right. Good and true words. What I wouldn't give if they'd always feel this way. Continuing to revere me and always keep all of my commands, they'd have a good life forever and their children. Go ahead and tell them to go home to their tents, but you stay here with me so I can tell you every commandment, all the rules and regulations that must be taught to them, so they'll know how to live in the land that I'm giving them as their own. So be careful to act exactly as God commands you. Don't veer off to the right or the left. Straight down the road God commands you, so that you'll have a good life and live a long time in the land that you're about to possess. This is the commandment, the rules and regulations that God, your God, commanded me to teach you. Live out in the land you're about to cross and to possess. This is so that you'll live in deep reverence before God, lifelong observing of all his rules and regulations that I'm commanding you. You and your children and your grandchildren, living good long lives. Listen obediently, Israel. Do what you're told so that you'll have a good life, a life of abundant bounty, just as God promised, in the land abounding in milk and honey. Attention, Israel. God, our God, God the one and only. Love God, your God, in your whole heart. Love him with all that's in it. Love him with all you got. Write these commandments that I've given you today on your hearts. Get them inside of you, and then get them inside of your children. Talk about them wherever you are, sitting at home or walking in the street. Talk about them from the time you get up in the morning for when you fall to bed at night. Tie them in your hands and on your foreheads as a reminder. Inscribe them on the doorposts and homes and your city gates. When God, your God, ushers you into the land he promised you through the ancestors of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to give you, you're going to walk into large, bustling cities you didn't build, well-furnished houses you didn't buy. Come upon wells you didn't dig, vineyards and olive orchards you didn't plant. And when you take it all in and settle down, please and content, make sure you don't forget how you got there. God brought you out of slavery and into Egypt. Deeply respect God, your God. Serve and worship him exclusively. Back up your promises with his name only. Don't fool around with the other gods, the God of your neighbors, because God, your God, who is alive among you, is a jealous God. Don't provoke, igniting his hot anger that would burn you right off the face of the earth. Don't push God, your God, to the walls you did on that day as Massa, the testing place. Carefully keep the commands of God, your God, all the requirements and regulations he gave you. Do what is right. Do what is good in God's sight, so you will live a good life and be able to march in and take his pleasant land that God so solemnly promised through your ancestors. Throwing out your enemies right, left and right, exactly as God said. The next time your children ask you, what do these requirements and regulations and rules that God, our God, has commanded mean? Tell your children, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and God powerfully intervened and got us out of that country. We stood there and watched. God delivered miracle signs, great wonders, and evil visualizations on Egypt. On Pharaoh and his household, he pulled us out of there so he could bring us here and give us the land he so solemnly promised to our ancestors. That's why God commands us to follow these rules so that we would live reverently before God, our God, and he gives us good life, keeping us alive for a long time to come. It'll be set right and put together life for us if we make sure that we do this entire commandment in the presence of God, our God, just as he commanded us to do. When God, your God, brings you into the country that you are about to enter and take over, he will clear out the superpowers that were there before you, and Heidi and Gestite and Amarti and Kenite and Persite and Hevite and Jesabute. Those 7 nations are all bigger and stronger than you are. God, your God, will turn them over to you. You will conquer them. You must completely destroy them, offering them up as a holy destruction to God. Don't make a treaty with them. Don't let them off on any way. Don't marry them. Don't give your daughters to their sons, and don't take their daughters to your sons. Before you know it, they'd involve you in worshiping their gods, and God would exploit in anger, putting a quick end to you. Here's what to do. Tear apart their idols stone by stone, smash the phallalic pillars, chop down their sects and religion, Asheva groves, set fire to their carved god images. Do this because you are a people set apart as holy to God, your God. God your God choose you out of all the people on the earth for himself as cherished personal treasure. God wasn't attracted to you and didn't choose you because you were big and important. In fact, there was almost nothing to you. He did it out of sheer love, keeping the promise he made to your ancestors. God stepped in mightily and brought you back out of the world of slavery, freed you from the iron grip of Pharaoh and King Egypt. Know this, God, your God, is God indeed, a God you can depend on. He keeps his covenant of loyal love with those who love and observe his commandments for thousands of generations. But he also pays back those who hate him, pays them with wages of death. He isn't slow to pay them off. Those who hate him, he pays right on time. So keep the command and the rules and regulations that I command you today. Do them, and this is what will happen when you, on your part, will obey the directives, keeping and following them. God, on his part, will keep the covenant of loyal love that he made with your ancestors. He will love you, he will bless you, he will increase you. He will bless the babies from your womb and the harvest grain, new wine and oil from your fields. He'll bless the calves from your herds and lambs from your flocks in the country you promised your ancestors that he'd give you. You'll be blessed beyond all other peoples. No sterility, barrenness in you or your animals. God will get rid of the sickness and all the evil infections you've experienced in Egypt. He'll put not on you, but on those who hate you. You'll make mincemeat. Oh, goodness. You'll make mincemeat of all the peoples that God, your God, hands over to you. Don't feel sorry for them and don't worship their gods. He'll trap you for sure. Or they'll trap you for sure. You're going to think to yourselves, oh, we're outnumbered 10-1 by these nations. We'll never even make a dent in them. But I'm telling you, don't be afraid. Remember in detail what God your God did to Pharaoh and all Egypt. Remember the great contest of which you were eyewitnesses. Eyewitnesses to the miracle signs, the wonders, God's almighty hand. He stretched out his arm and took you out of there. God your God is going to do the same thing to those people you're now so afraid of. And to top it off, the hornet, God will unleash the hornet's nest on them until every survivor is in hiding is dead. So don't be intimidated by them. God your God is among you. God majestic, God is awesome. God your God will get rid of these nations bit by bit. You won't be permitted to wipe them all out all at once, lest the wild animals take over and overwhelm you. But God your God will move them out of your way. He'll throw them into a huge panic until there's nothing left of them. He'll turn their kings over to you. You'll remove all traces of them under heaven. Not one person will be able to stand up to you. You'll put an end to them all. Make sure you set fire of their carved gods. Don't get greedy for the veneer of silver and gold on them and take it to yourselves. You'll get trapped by it for sure. God hates it, and its abandonment it's abomination to God, your God. And don't dare bring one of the abominations home, or you'll end up just like it. Burn it up as holy destruction. No, it is forbidden. Hate it, abominate it, destroy it, and persevere God's holiness. Keep and live out the entire commandment that I'm commanding you today, so that you'll live and prosper and enter and own land that God promised to you, your ancestors. Remember every road that God led you on for these 40 years in the wilderness, pushing you to your limits, testing you so that he would know what you were made of, whether you would keep his commandments or not. He put you through hard times. He made you go hungry. Then he fed you with manna, something neither you nor your parents knew anything about. So you would learn that men and women don't live by bread alone. We live by every word that comes from God's mouth. Your clothes didn't wear out and your feet didn't blister those 40 years. You learned deep in your heart that God's disciplines you in the same ways the Father disciplines his child. So it's paramount that you keep commandments of God, your God. Walk down the roads he shows you. Fervently respect him. God is about to bring you into good land, a land with brooks and rivers, springs, lakes, streams out of the hills, through the valleys. It's a land of wheat and barley, of vines and figs, pomegranates of olives, oil and honey. It's a land you'll never go hungry, always food on the table and roof over your head. It's a land where you'll get iron out of rocks and mine copper from hills. After a meal satisfies, blesses your God for the good land he has given you. Make sure you don't forget God, your God, by keeping his commandments, his rules and regulations that I command you today. Make sure that when you eat and are satisfied, build pleasant houses and are settled in, your herds and flocks flourish, and more money come in. Watch your standard of living going up and up. Make sure you don't become so full of yourself and things that you forget God, your God, the God who delivered you from the Egyptian slavery, the God who led you through the huge, fearsome wilderness, those delicate badlands, crawling in the fearing snakes and scorpions, the God who gave you water gushing from hard rocks, the God who gave you manna to eat in the wilderness, something your ancestors have never heard of, in order to give you taste of hard life, to test you, that you would be prepared to live well in the days ahead of you. If you start thinking to yourselves, I did all this and all by myself, I am rich, it's all mine. Well, think again. Remember that God, your God, gave you the strength to produce all this wealth. And so, as to confirm the covenant that he promised to your ancestors as it is today. If you forget God, your God, and start taking up with other gods and serving, worshiping them. I'm on record right now and giving you firm warning that will be the end of you. I mean it, destruction. You'll go to your doom, the same as nations God is destroying before you, doomed because you wouldn't obey the voice of God, your God. Wow, that's powerful. That is the end of chapter 8. And how beautiful of a picture that is, that the voice of God, is so powerful as that. So I hope that that's a blessing to you. I've got meetings to attend, so I'm going to let you go and I will talk soon. I hope you have a beautiful and blessed day.